This video was brought to you by Brilliant, and the first 200 people to use the link below will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Late on Monday evening, Politico published a report suggesting that the Supreme Court of the United States were on track to overturn Roe v. Wade, a landmark 1973 decision in which the court ruled that the US Constitution granted a woman the right to an abortion without excessive government interference. So, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at this draft opinion, what it means for other landmark rulings, and what it means for American politics more generally. So, before we get into the draft opinion itself, let's start with a lightning quick history of Roe v. Wade, which begins with the Griswold versus Connecticut case of 1965. Basically, at the time, Connecticut had passed a law banning married couples from buying and using contraception. This was, frankly, a slightly silly law because it was almost impossible to enforce, so predictably it was challenged in the courts, where the Supreme Court eventually decided to strike it down. In the ruling, Justice William Douglas stated that, while not explicitly stated in the Constitution, one can infer a right to privacy from, quote, penumbra and emanations of various articles of the Constitution, and that this right to privacy extends to a married couple's right to contraception. Remember this inferred right to privacy, though, because it's relevant to the draft ruling. Anyway, a few years later, in 1973, we get Roe v. Wade, where the plaintiffs argued that a Texas law banning abortion in most instances violated this inferred right to privacy. The Supreme Court ultimately agreed, ruling that the Due Process Clause in the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides a right to privacy that protects a pregnant woman's right to choose whether or not to have an abortion. The court did, however, also note that there was no explicit right to an abortion in the Constitution, and that this inferred right of privacy wasn't absolute, which means that it has to be balanced against other considerations. This right to privacy came up again in 1992 with Planned Parenthood versus Casey, where the plaintiffs argued that an abortion law in Pennsylvania, which limited access to abortion, contradicted Roe v. Wade. Ultimately, in a shock verdict, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the Roe v. Wade ruling. In a joint opinion, 3 conservative Republican appointees, Justices Sandra Day O'Connor, Anthony Kennedy, and David Souter, write that while they find abortion offensive to their moral intuitions and are wary that Roe v. Wade might be federal overreach, their concerns are outweighed by the importance of A, the inferred right of privacy, and B, respect for precedent. Essentially, the idea with this respect for precedent is that the court can't overrule Roe v. Wade because it's such an important legal precedent, and reversing this sort of decision would undermine the legitimacy of future court decisions, because if they can just be overruled, then do they hold as much weight anymore? The court did, however, introduce a different legal standard, ruling that states can regulate abortion before viability, but may not impose, quote, undue burden on a woman looking for an abortion. And this is basically where we are today. According to the Supreme Court, women have a qualified right to an abortion covered by their right to privacy, which is inferred by various articles in the Constitution. However, according to Politico's bombshell report, this is all about to change. Politico's reporters Josh Gerstein and Alexander Ward have been able to get hold of a leaked draft opinion for the first time in US Supreme Court history. This draft opinion was written by Justice Samuel Alito on February 10th and states that both Roe v. Wade and Casey v. Planned Parenthood should be overruled. This leaked opinion relates to Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, a case which is currently pending before the court, where the plaintiffs argue that a 2018 Mississippi law, which banned abortion operations after the first 15 weeks, violates Roe v. Wade. And the opinion on this case is supported by a 5-strong majority of justices: Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. The leaked opinion argues that the Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and that while some privacy-related rights can be inferred from Article 14, the right to abortion is not covered. The opinion describes Roe v. Wade as egregiously wrong, with exceptionally weak reasoning, and suggests that the question of abortion should instead be up to state legislatures to decide. The state does acknowledge the argument made in Casey v. Planned Parenthood that the court should respect precedent, but argues that when it comes to constitutional questions, this is not enough for the matter to be, quote, settled. It has to be, quote, settled right. So, does this mean that it's the end for Roe v. Wade? Well, it is only a draft opinion, but while the wording might change, there's a clear majority on the court in favour of overturning it, which doesn't bode well for its proponents. There's also been some speculation that this is bad news for other liberal court rulings, which rely on this inferred right to privacy, which would include the right to contraception, the right to engage in private consensual sexual activity, and the right to marry someone of the same sex. But it is worth saying that Alito claims that he doesn't intend to cast doubt on other constitutional precedents. Nonetheless, whatever Alito claims, it's at least true that the legal reasoning used here does put other rulings at more risk than they were previously. As you'd expect, Politico's report has sparked protests, and Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer penned a joint statement describing the draft opinion as an abomination. The strength of response to this report will put immense political pressure on the Supreme Court, who, at the time of writing, are yet to respond to this, the first leak in Supreme Court history. And it's at times like this that the political nature of the Supreme Court becomes a real disadvantage, because, well, it's hard to maintain your legal legitimacy when your rulings are so clearly subject to political processes. And that's important too, because while we'll have to wait and see what the court does end up saying on this, and whether they end up revoking Roe or any of the other precedents, this could have a major impact on the upcoming elections towards the end of this year. If Roe is overturned, or even just threatened further, it could cause more Democrats to turn out than expected. Biden's looking weak heading into these midterms, as most incumbents normally do, but moves like this from the Supreme Court could drive the Democrats to action and force more of their voters to the polls, something which could only boost his support. Regardless, contentious issues like this don't often play well with the YouTube algorithm, so I'd like to thank Brilliant for supporting our journalism today. Brilliant is an online STEM learning platform that allows you to get smarter every day by learning huge important topics through engaging and interactive experiences. Gone are the long boring lectures that I sat through to get my computer science degree, instead replaced by puzzles and interactive experiences which teach you the knowledge you need to know in a way you actually want to learn. It really is all the knowledge you could need too, because Brilliant have courses from the very basics of computer science and maths right through to neural networks, quantum computing, and even quantitative finance to help you better understand financial markets. All of these courses are designed by award-winning instructors and built upon the principle of active learning, so you're gaining STEM knowledge by actually doing it. So if you want to improve with STEM, then you can sign up to Brilliant at brilliant.org/TLDR US, and the first 200 people to do so will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for supporting the channel.